Do you have a dream car? Mine is the Lucid Air. Are you intrigued by electric vehicles? The Lucid Air EV has been called the best driving car in the world. And the Lucid Air Sapphire is certifiably the fastest production car in the world. Listen to Lucid Driver Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts or at luciddriver.buzzsprout.com. And I suspect, I'll speak for myself, if I were a vlogger like the people I've had on the show, my fantasy as I'm doing these vlogs is to be you, you know,
Yeah.
to become what you have become, and have it featured television style on something like a Prime Video.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofvacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofvacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and I am delighted to welcome this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, Stacey Parks, the co-creator and producer of an amazing new television series that passionate cruisers like me and the listeners won't be able to get enough of. Grand Voyages is a cruise-focused documentary series now streaming on Amazon Prime in the U.S. and U.K. Stacey has over 20 years' experience producing more than a dozen feature films and series, which have gone on to be distributed across every major streaming platform. In the travel genre specifically, she previously co-created and produced the digital series The Upgrade for Bravo's digital platform. Stacey founded Media Spark Studios to focus on digital-first storytelling across the streaming and connected TV universe. In her spare time, she enjoys travel and cruising, having visited over 60 countries and enjoyed life on board over 35 ocean, river, and expedition cruises. Welcome, Stacey, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Happy to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you for being a long-time listener. I love my listeners. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you.
But before we discuss your impressive career and the exciting Grand Voyages series, tell our listeners about yourself in general. Where you're from, where you live, anything you would like to share.
Sure. So I am coming to you now from Los Angeles. I live here in Los Angeles. Been here for probably, close to 30 years. I'm originally from Miami, born and raised in Miami, Florida, and came out to Los Angeles for graduate school and never went back.
What kind of graduate school? Film?
I went to business school. No, actually, I went to business school. I got an MBA.
Okay. So, how did you get started in the film business?
Well, so I moved, like I said, I moved out here to go to graduate school and absolutely fell in love with LA and Southern California. And I had always wanted to do something in the creative arts field. And so when I got out of graduate school, I thought, well, I want to work well, I'm out here in LA. Let me figure out what this film business is about. So I decided to I started my career actually in the talent agency business, which is kind of where and I tell this to everybody who says, like, if I want to start in the film business or the entertainment industry, where's a good place to start? And the advice then and the advice now is like the talent agencies is a really good place to start, become an assistant, and learn the ropes of the whole industry. So yeah.
So the talent,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Talent agency, is that what us lay people think of as casting?
Not really. So the agency I worked for was the William Morris Agency, which is a famous one. You've probably heard of that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they do represent actors, but we had directors and writers and the whole thing.
Right.
And
Okay. I was thinking you were on the
yeah.
side of the aspect of business that supplies potential actors to programs and series.
Yeah.
Okay.
So was working there, did that for about 5 years. And during that process, got to work in different parts of the agency and really figured out one of the areas that I was really interested in was independent film. And what that meant back then was clients would come in with, hey, this is my script. I want to get this made. And we would figure out how to put the financing together, the distribution together, and all that. So I really enjoyed that part of the business. So after a certain amount of years working at the talent agency doing that, I felt like I wanted to get closer to that creative process. And my next job after that was in distribution. So I started working with different companies on representing completed films that, like, for example, like you hear films that screen at the Sundance Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival, all the film festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And we would work with the films once they were completed and premiering at festivals and help find it distribution. And that's where I kind of really caught my stride in the business and worked for many years doing that. And at some point, doing that for enough time, I wanted to get even closer to the creative process. So I started to partner and collaborate with some of the clients whose films I helped sell when they were finished. And they would start coming to me and saying, hey, I loved how we worked together on getting my film distributed, but why don't we partner up earlier on in the process and help me put the pieces together to get it financed and make the movie? And so that was my next step, was going from selling completed films to partnering with other people on making the films. And I really enjoyed that and did that for many years. And then I got to the point where I was like, hey, I want to do this for my own ideas. And that kind of led me to where I am today. And so for the last several years, I've been developing myself and with my partner at Media Spark Studios to develop our own ideas, create them, and make them. And that's where kind of Grand Voyages was born, why we're talking today.
We'll be right back.
The Joy Vacation by Dream Vacations invites you to join us on a bucket list adventure to Africa. We're going to Kenya and Egypt for 14 days, April 10th through April 24th, 2027. A week in Kenya, including safaris, and a week in Egypt, including the pyramids and a 4-day Nile River cruise. This adventure includes air from the U.S., all transfers, all accommodations, private tours, and many meals. $5,000 to $5,500, depending on air, per person. Double occupancy. Only $250 per person deposit due at booking. The remainder is not due until late 2026. For a detailed itinerary, online brochure, and to book, email me at pthornton, THORNTON, pthornton @dreamvacations.com. So Media Spark Studios, that's you and your partner's creation?
Yep, that's our company.
It's funny. So you're really there where I was about to say, when you were talking about all of those different uh, parts of the business that you have kind of touched, kind of
Mhm.
learned, I was going to make a comment and say, wow, you have a very versatile and packed resume. We're gonna hear about you someday as one of those studio moguls. Well, you already are a studio
Oh,
mogul.
thank you. Yeah. It's a studio mogul for a new generation. Let's just say that because the business has changed
Yeah.
a lot since I first started back at the William Morris Agency.
So talk about the highlights. I mean,
Yeah,
you talked about the mechanics and the logistics and moving through the various parts of the business, um, but you did produce more than a dozen feature films we mentioned in the intro. Give us
yeah,
some highlights of those years before Grand Voyage
yeah,
because I know that's the ultimate for me. For us cruise lovers, that's the ultimate highlight. Give us the highlights
yeah.
leading up to
So,
Grand Voyage.
when I really started collaborating with others to make the movies was when I felt like I really had tapped into my true passion of collaborating with writers and actors and directors and so I have to say, like one of the probably the biggest highlights, if I think back, was when I got to make films with other people. So everything from being on location in different parts of the world. I was part of a film that we made in Burgundy in France, which was really funny. Coming full circle, one of the episodes of Grand Voyages was on a river cruise in the same part of France where I had shot this movie like 10 years earlier.
You
Um,
say what was it a documentary or feature?
no, it was a
What was the
feature film.
movie?
It was called Under the Eiffel Tower. It's on Amazon Prime. I think you can find it now.
Okay. Now, so do you have? I'm just
Yeah.
these questions popping in my head. Do you have credit on that? I
hmm
mean,
Yeah, I have an
okay.
executive producer credit on that. And then, so yeah, highlights. I mean, just getting to travel all over the world, collaborate with some of the most creative minds in the business. Um, being on location when you're shooting a film, I like to say, like each film is like its own universe, right? You set up shop somewhere, whether it's, in Paris, in Atlanta, in upstate New York, in Los Angeles. These are all places I've shot. You set up shop for a month, 2 months, 3 months, however long the shoot is. And it's like sometimes I think they refer to it sometimes as like summer camp for adults, right? And it's like it's this whole kind of insular little universe where um, it's a whole lot of fun. It's exhausting, but at the end of it, it's very very rewarding. And so I feel really blessed that I've been able to do that so many times and be a part of these projects and collaborate with such talented people all over the world and build relationships with them. So that's been a definite highlight is the people and the projects and the places I've been able to go doing producing movies. And then I would say the second big highlight, which kind of led me to where I am now with Grand Voyages, is at some point in all of that process, um, you know, my partner and I kind of stepped back and we said, we've got all these big things going on in the background. Let's do something for us, something small, something simple. And that ended up being a pivotal point, which was this travel series I had mentioned to you. We did back in 2018 with Bravo Digital. And it was a little travel series called The Upgrade. And at the time, the Bravo network, were housewives and all that. Like they were launching a digital platform. And it was back when all the networks were kind of launching their digital offerings. And I had back then and still am, but I was into points and miles and travel hacking and all that. And it was one of my passions. And I was like, I'd really love to do a little travel series where we travel around the world all on miles and points and travel first class and stay in five-star hotels. And I pitched that idea to Bravo, and they said yes. It was one of those crazy stories. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And next thing you know, it was me and my partner and a host and a couple of cameras, and we were on a plane for the next 3 weeks doing the thing, shooting the little series. And it was such a rewarding project because of the simplicity of it and because it was mine, it was ours. I wasn't collaborating with 30 or 100 people. I was collaborating with one other person or two other people. And after that experience, I got the bug and said, I want to be able to do this again. And then in full circle, that's what Grand Voyages became in 2026. It took me a while to get back to it because I had a bunch of other big projects and things lined up. Um, but eventually I did. So that was another really big highlight of my career, having the opportunity to do something like that on my own, and it was a real turning point.
Now that Bravo production upgrades.
The
Called?
upgrade, yeah.
The upgrades. Can we still see that?
You know, there's bits and pieces of it. They shut down the digital platform that they had, but there are some episodes still on YouTube. If I find them, I'll send you a couple links so you can check it out. But that, you know, that kind of taught me something valuable, which again, led us to Grand Voyages, which was, you know, we put our heart and soul into this little project. We loved it so much. It was a passion project. And at the end of it, you know, Bravo had control to put it on their platform. They owned it because they paid for it. So they owned it. They had it on their platform. And when the company shut down that platform, the series went away and we couldn't ever be able to do anything else with it. And so the big lesson of that was when we do this again, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to pay for it, fund it, make it ourselves, and own it so that we're able to go out and distribute it how we want, market it how we want, promote it how we want, and go directly to our audience.
Okay. So, and you went directly to Amazon Prime Video.
Yep.
So we're gonna come back to Grand Voyages, but we're gonna veer off for a minute.
Yep.
Before we do, so you mentioned Under the Eiffel Tower is on Prime, and we know Grand Voyages, which we're going to talk about in detail, is on Prime. Do you have anything else on Prime?
I have, yeah. Well, I have a couple other movies that I did that your listeners might be interested in. One is called Freedom Hair. That one is on Prime and Apple. I have another one called
Freedom Hair.
And I can send you these links.
What's that about? That sounds interesting. I mean, it's just kind of an interesting title.
Yeah, it's about, it's based on the real life of somebody who basically was running braiding salons in Mississippi and was able to change the laws so that she could continue to operate and other people could continue to operate and helped women start braiding businesses. It's a really interesting story based on true events. And we did it in partnership with Melanie, who's the subject of the movie. And it was not a documentary. It's a feature film with actors and everything like that. But
okay,
these are all like feature films with actors and film.
Okay.
Yeah. And
but it's based on a real person. That sounds really interesting. I'm gonna run to that after we get off.
Look at that for sure. Yeah, and then there's one other one called Kemba that's also based on a true story, and that one is on BET Plus. We did that as a co-production with BET. That one's on BET Plus now, and I think Paramount Plus. So you can find all of these for free online now on the streaming platforms.
Great, great. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about cruising.
Yay.
I always ask my guests. I have a lot of listeners who I sense that I have from feedback and what have you, that I have a lot of listeners who have not yet been on a cruise, and they aspire to go on a cruise, and that's why they listen. So I always ask my guests to describe their first cruise, just to give the listeners a sense of the diversity of impressions that I've had some disasters for first cruises from people who turned out to be, huge cruise personalities. So talk about your first cruise, when and on what ship.
All right, so I'm going to throw it back a little bit here because my first official cruise was in the 80s in Miami. There was these lines. The one that I went on was called Sea Escape. And anyone who grew up in Miami in the 80s will know the reference.
Mm-hmm.
And these,
I've heard of it.
Yeah. And these cruises back then, it was like an overnight or day trip to Bimini, Freeport, Bahamas, right? And anyway, so officially that was my first cruise. Now it was probably, I can't even remember, Paul, if it was like a day trip or if we actually spent the night. I think we probably spent the night it was like an overnight. And I loved it. But then I actually didn't cruise again. Then my real cruise after that was in Alaska in 2005. So I skipped about 20 years. And then my first cruise was on the NCL Spirit in Alaska. And it's funny because I've heard other of your guests say this too, which is like, it was a cruise that my mom actually really wanted to do. And I remember thinking, what do I want to go to Alaska for? I don't want to be cold. I don't care about any of that scenery, on and on. It's like the preconceptions that a lot of people have about Alaska before they go. And then I went and I was like, oh, I get it. And I've been back.
Sounds similar to me.
Yeah.
I went to Alaska on the same ship.
Oh, okay.
Although, I don't know if you know, that ship has been totally redone. So I went on the post revamp version, and we fell in love with Alaska. So I haven't been back, but that's I tend to not repeat destinations. That will be an exception to the rule.
Yeah, I've been back like 4 times. So.
Oh yeah, so yeah. Once you go,
I got
once
the bug.
you go, you know.
I know, yeah. So I loved it, and then so I was hooked, and from that time on till now, I think I've been on just over 35 cruises, all the lines, and now of course making it my profession, I get to do it a lot more. Which has been awesome. But so that was my first cruise. Well, officially first cruise was Sea Escape. Shout out Sea Escape, Miami in the 80s. And then traditional real cruise, 2005, NCL Spirit in Alaska. And from then on, it was pretty much every year, multiple, as many as I could do.
I know that you've been on a river cruise. What line was that?
So I did. I did 2. The first river cruise was with Uniworld, the SS La Venezia. So the first episode in the series was also the very first river cruise we ever took. And the funny thing is, Paul, is the irony is it wasn't even on a river. That ship is on the Venice Lagoon. So it was a river ship, a river cruise, but not technically on a river. So the next river cruise I did a couple of months later was on Riverside, the Riverside Revel, and that one was on the same route that you've done in the past, Avignon to Lyon. And so that I feel like was the first real river cruise because we went on a river. And I'm hooked on those two now. I've heard you say the
Yeah.
same thing. Once you go on, it's like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah. And I tell you now, I hadn't heard of the that river cruise or kind of quasi river cruise that you profiled in the first episode.
Yeah.
I've been to Venice, so I love it. I didn't go to Venice on a cruise, and now it's hard to go there on a cruise because they've kind of pushed back
They
on big
did.
cruise ships. But I went there. I was doing a land vacation in Italy and took a train to Venice, and I loved it. But what was so captivating about that first episode that you did on the Venice Lagoon is that's a different way to experience Venice.
Yeah.
And now, I have this bucket list, and it's like I keep adding stuff
Never
to it,
ending.
and I'm like getting older and older, and at some point, I'm not going to be able to cruise, but that was a whole nother way of seeing Venice, and that's now on my bucket list.
Good. You should
But
be.
I'm
Or
jumping
jumping. I
ahead.
know.
Yeah, getting to the show. So so you've cruised a lot since well, especially since you started doing the
Yeah.
series. What's your latest cruise? Not related. Well, whether it was related to the series or not. What's your latest cruise?
Okay. Well, I have two answers to that. I was supposed to be on a river cruise last week in the Danube, and it got canceled. All that is going on right now with the low water levels. So that was
Oh, okay.
so
That's right. You mentioned that
yeah,
because that's the hold up on season 2.
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get to that. But so that was supposed to be my next cruise. So I was bummed out about that. But right before that, I was up in Alaska again with HX, the expedition line. And it was my first expedition cruise and also my first time. I told you I'd been to Alaska multiple times. So I was like seeing Alaska in a different way. And it was really special. I enjoyed that immensely. And, like river cruising, when I cruised on the rivers for the first time, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Now I want to do more of these. I felt the same about the expedition style cruise. I can't wait to do more of those. So
Now I haven't done an expedition cruise yet, but I'm gonna guess, or you correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to do a fair amount of physical activity relative
yes.
to other. Okay.
Yes.
Now is that something? Are you in your, and we'll talk about your free time later, but is that something you do? Are you work out, you
Yep.
run and stuff like that? Okay, so you expedition cruise wasn't too challenging for you.
It wasn't. And you know what, Paul? Also, I have to say, I had preconceptions that you have to be a certain fitness level and a certain mobility level. We had people on there who, like I would see coming in a walker to the dining room, but yet they were getting on the little zodiacs with us. So it was more accessible than I thought it would be. I would still be careful in recommending it to somebody with that. But if you basically, the way that at least HX had it set up is like, as long as you could, walk down 2 steps into the little zodiacs, you were good to go to do all the sightseeing and stuff like that. And you didn't have to do hiking, and you can opt out of any of the hiking and walking and just still get most of the experience just by riding in those zodiacs. So it's good to know.
Let's talk about Grand Voyages.
Hmm.
Um, so I binge watched season 1 in one sitting, and that's not
Thank
as
you.
hard as it
See,
sounds because
exactly.
it was just 3 episodes. And so accordingly, leading up to the airing of this podcast, I have urged listeners to do the same
Thank
prior
you.
to your podcast. So many of our listeners have seen season one. When this airs, um, but for those who have not, or those who don't have, I guess if you don't have Amazon Prime, there's no way to see it, right?
Not yet. No,
Okay.
but actually there is. So if you don't have Prime, you can still rent it on Amazon. I think it's like
Oh, that's right.
a
That's right. I
dollar
forgot they
per
do that. Yeah,
dollar
yeah. Okay.
99 an episode or something. So it's pretty
Okay.
cheap.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So for those who are not aware, what is Grand?
So Grand Voyages is a documentary series where we take viewers behind the scenes, below deck, um, into kind of some of the spaces that you normally wouldn't see, on some of the most stunning ocean, river, and expedition cruises.
Right. Uh, Briefly describe the episodes we saw in season one. Many of us saw, and many of us will see, hopefully, as soon as this
Yeah,
airs.
yeah. So episode one is on the Uniworld SS La Venezia in the Venice Lagoon, like we kind of chatted about already a little bit. Episode two is on the Holland America Rotterdam, which I know you've been on, Paul. I heard you talk about that. So excited to chat with you about that. And that was in the Norwegian fjords. And episode three was on the Riverside Revel in the south of France on Avignon to Lyon route, the Rhone.
Can you give us a hint of what's to come in season two? And when is that going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're shooting season two right now. We've already shot on
Ooh,
Windstar, which was a big one. And I listened to your interview with Janet Bava. She has been a huge inspiration to me over the years. So I really enjoyed that. So we shot on Windstar.
before the podcast, I also did books, the same format, really, kind of
Oh,
interviewing
yeah. Okay.
passionate cruisers. The podcast follows the same theme of the book. Passionate cruisers, and especially with you, the fascinating way they act on their passion. So I consider you a passionate cruiser, and I admire,
Yeah.
I envy, what the way you've acted on your passion. Uh, but when I wrote the books, I also did a feature on Windstar. It was a great story. Um, a woman into her
Yeah.
90s who would take her family on cruises. So, I mean, you Windstar. I haven't been on Windstar yet, but I'd love to get on Windstar. And I like talking to Janet.
Yeah. It's a real treat. Yeah. So season two, we've shot on Windstar. We did the HX in Alaska last month. So that was
What was
also
that?
HX.
Oh, that's the expedition line. Okay.
Yeah, in Alaska. And was supposed to do Emerald river cruise in the Danube, but that is currently being rescheduled. So we may do a Christmas markets with them instead. So that might be in
Ooh,
season
that's
two.
nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned another
Bucket
one that's on
list.
my bucket list. Yeah,
Yeah.
Christmas markets is on there somewhere.
Same. And then we are, so those three for sure. And then still talking for season one, we were only able to get three done in time. My goal was season two. would be to see if we can get to 4 or 5. And then season 3, I'm already putting season 3 together. We start shooting in January in Antarctica. We're going to go on an Antarctica sailing, and that will be in season 3. You asked when season 2 will come out. Hopefully by the end of this year. So season 1 was released. Now we're talking in August. Was released in August, and hopefully season 2 will be December, if not January. So,
Do you just like the vessels that you collaborate with, that you present? You just how do I say it? Maybe make a presentation to them. I mean, you just try to appeal to different cruise lines, or do they come to you?
Yeah, mixture of both, right? So in the beginning, we didn't have anything. We had an idea, and we had a track record and a career of making movies and the upgrade for Bravo and things like that. So in the very beginning, like anything, it's rolling up your sleeves and hitting the email, hitting the phones, hitting any relationships we had, and also, filtering it through, like, hey, what would make a good show? What would make a good episode? Because we had in our mind what we wanted to do. So, we select different lines and voyages accordingly. So yeah, so in the beginning, it was a lot of us reaching out and finding our collaborators and cruise partners that way. And now that we have a show up on Amazon Prime and we're starting to get some press and things like that, um, we have a lot of people now, coming to us, reaching back out to us. There were people who we had conversations with for season 1 that didn't work out for one reason or another, scheduling, or they had too much going on, or we had too much going on, and who are now seeing what we've done and saying, "Hey, let's get you on our new ship this year," or whatever. So, it's
Yeah, so you're yeah, that reminds me kind of when I started the
yeah,
process. When I wrote my first book, I was cold
yeah,
calling. I was just a
yeah,
voice on the internet. You know,
r-
and by book 2, I had a couple of well-known personalities
yeah. It's
contact
nice,
me.
right? It's a nice
So
feeling.
yeah, yeah. Um, Hey, offline, I had a
Sure.
couple of thoughts,
Yeah.
of some things that, I mean, maybe I might be able to facilitate an introduction,
Would
or
love
two.
that.
So,
Yeah.
but we'll
Sure.
chat
Thank
about
you.
that. Um, um, uh, so, uh, how did Grand Voyages come about? I know you were motivated by the
Hmm.
upgrades, the short life of upgrades. But say
Yeah.
some more about the foundation, the founding, and the development and growth
Yeah.
of Grand Voyage.
So I guess it starts with, I was I'm I am and have been for a very long time an avid consumer of cruise content, right? Everything starting with Mighty Cruise Ships. You remember Mighty Cruise Ships
Oh
on
yeah, yep,
So I like to say that may have been the earliest inspiration for Grand Voyages because at the time I think it was the only thing on TV, at least in the US, where they had that real behind the scenes cruise show. You know what I mean? You got to really learn about the different ships, the different lines, go below deck into the bridge, all that stuff. So I was an avid consumer of that series. And then later, when cruise podcasts and vlogs started to come on the scene, was an avid consumer of that. So I always like to say I am and have been like a consumer. I'm a customer of these shows, right? For a very long time. So um And so much so that like all these years I was producing movies on location, on sets, all this stuff in the background, for my downtime, I would, be like watching cruise vlogs on YouTube or listening to cruise podcasts because I was not only so passionate about it, but it was just a way to kind of like, turn off for a second. So anyway, so that I'd like to say is like the original inspiration, which is seeing what others had done in the genre. And then um, that was just always with me. So then there was a point in the industry. So I was producing movies like back to back to back to back after like starting during COVID and right after COVID. And then there was a point a couple years ago where we had a lot of strikes in the film industry and the entertainment industry. The unions went on strike, SAG, the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild. It was a big mess. And suddenly, like overnight, a lot of projects were shut down. The industry shut down. A lot of things that I had in development that were supposed to go, bigger projects, suddenly became not viable. And my partner, Jennifer, and I, we sat there and we said, okay, now what? Like overnight, like our industry has shut down. All these projects we've been cultivating are now no more. They're not going to happen, at least for the foreseeable future. What do we do? And we said, you know what? Now is the time. Let's go back to that bug we caught shooting the upgrade. Let's shoot another travel show. And I'm also a big proponent of shoot what you know, write what you know, do what's in front of you. And like that was at the time, it was like my passion for cruises and cruise content was like at a fever pitch. I was just like, loved listening and watching stuff all the time. And I said to her, let's do a cruise show. And we didn't really know how to start or where to start. So we said, all right, we have the skills. Let's grab a couple cameras and start filming on cruise ships. Like I'd watched so many vlogs. I was like, I know we can do this. So we ended up booking, this is a funny story, Queen Mary 2. And that had been a bucket list for me for a very long time, was to do the transatlantic on the Queen Mary 2. And
Still is for me.
okay, that was definite, gotta get to that. And I'll give you a tip. Like we were suddenly free and available. And I went on their website and they were advertising free, like really good last minute deals. So basically, if you were willing to get on one of these cruises within 2 or 3 weeks, they were giving it away for a song. And I said, you know what? Let's do this. And we booked it for 2 weeks later. We flew to London and rode it back to New York. And we had our cameras. And that was kind of like our first time on a cruise ship with cameras. So we did that. We got to the end and we said, all right, let's do another one. We ended up doing like that summer and into the fall 4 cruises. What else did we do? We did a Virgin Voyages. We did a Celebrity in Alaska. And then we did an MSC in the Middle East. And all the time just kind of shooting vlog style, right? We hadn't asked for permission yet. We weren't doing anything behind the scenes. We were just shooting vlogs.
Okay, so at this time you weren't working with the permission or collaboration of the cruise ship.
Correct. We were doing what every other vlogger does, which is just get on, try to be discreet, and shoot your content. Okay. So we did all 4 of those. We came back and we're editing them, and it was taking us forever. I mean, if you go to our YouTube channel now, it's hilarious because we did these 4 cruises, and I think we only were able to get out like 3 or 4 videos across all of them because the process was just taking us so long. Now, plus we're, over 20 years in the business. So we had like held things to a different standard. It's like occupational hazard, let's say, is the perfectionism of like, we can't let this go out without looking like a TV show, on and on and on.
Right, right,
So
right.
one day, we sat down and we said, this isn't working. We're taking all these cruises. We're not able to get these episodes out. We have to like do this in a different way. And I said, you know what? Let's make a proper TV show. Let's approach the cruise lines. Let's get permission. Let's get the access. Let's make these a documentary series in the spirit of Mighty Cruise Ships, but we'll do it for modern day. And that was really the idea. And so you don't know what you don't know. And I did what you did when you first started writing your book. You pick up the phone, you start cold calling, cold emailing, and we found some early collaborators in Uniworld, Holland, and Riverside. And we were in business. And we said, all right, let's up level our gear. Let's get our broadcast grade cameras. We invested in a small little, gear kit to be able to do it and to be able to deliver it. And we set out probably let's see, 6 months later, and that's when we started shooting Grand Voyages. So it was funny, like in some, like, we kind of started the journey on the Queen Mary 2, saying like, let's go do some YouTube vlogs. And then in that process, realize what we really want to do is shoot a real TV show, and let's up level and do this properly. And that's kind of how the idea was born, and how we started.
That was a very inspirational story, and I have, as you know, because it sounds like you are a regular listener, I have vloggers on all the time, not all, pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And I've had virtually all of the top ones.
Yeah.
On the show, and I suspect I'll speak for myself. If I were a vlogger like the people I've had on the show, my fantasy as I'm doing these vlogs is to be you,
Yeah.
to become what you have become, and have it featured television style on something like a Prime Video.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as a matter of fact, even as a podcaster, I'm behind the camera, but I would love to do what you do. Just because really what you do is just a more grandiose version, and probably a more lucrative version of what I do. Is you tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
I allow people to tell their stories to my listeners. And you tell stories to the viewers.
Yeah.
And so just like the vloggers who I'm sure will listen to or I hope will listen to this episode, they better listen and get inspired, because you did it. You did what I'm sure many of them fantasize all the time. And really, as I said, even for a podcaster behind the scenes, that is a very inspirational story. I wish I could realize the dream that you have, that you're living. You're living the dream.
Thank you. I feel like it in my own little cruise world. But to your point about the vloggers, like I did have a few travel vloggers, not specifically cruise vloggers yet, but travel vloggers reach out to me kind of confidentially and say like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Can you help me get my shows up on Amazon, up on Apple, up on Tubi, up on any of these platforms because I want bigger exposure than just YouTube. I want to set myself apart. YouTube YouTube is wonderful, and eventually we will put our Grand Voyages episodes on YouTube down the line. But YouTube has become very, very crowded place. It's very hard to break through. It's very competitive. And so, what a lot of the travel vloggers who've been in the space for a while are seeing is like, how do I get my content noticed beyond YouTube and be able to position myself a little higher, sell bigger sponsorships, get into partnership with bigger brands because I've set myself apart. So behind the scenes, I have consulted with a few travel bloggers in that area. And helped them expand their distribution. Remember, I had a huge career in distribution for a very long time. So this is, getting onto Amazon Prime, getting onto these platforms. That is my wheelhouse. That is my expertise. That is my specialty. I've cultivated that for an entire career. So that's why that piece was easier for me, and why we tapped out of vlogging and YouTube pretty quickly when we saw the limitations and went back to our professional film and TV roots and said, what are we doing? We know how to do this on a bigger level and get bigger distribution. Let's just go for it, and we did. And now it's paying off, thankfully.
Well, I suspect you're going to get a few more calls after this episode.
Maybe, yeah.
They talk about, how a slower approach of filming these episodes unlocks new insights into how you select a particular cruise, based on what you're actually looking for.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like filming on an active sailing, which is what we're doing. Like we're not chartering these boats. They're not emptying their cruise ships for us to come in. We are filming on an active sailing, and we are not, as you've seen it, like we try not to get passengers in it. We have to be very stealth. We can't disturb passengers. I mean, that's kind of our agreement with these cruise lines is we have to blend in, look like regular tourists, not disturb any passenger's experience. People have spent a lot of money to be there, right? They don't want cameras in their faces. So it really forces us to slow down on these sailings, pay attention, be very thoughtful about what we're going to shoot. We do an enormous amount of planning before we get there. If we've been on the vessel before, that's helpful. But if we haven't, then it's doing a ton of research into what we can of what are the ship's faces like, what do we want to shoot, how do we want to schedule these things. And then the other thing you'll notice when you watch these, so not only are we shooting on active sailings and have to really slow down and kind of pay attention, but we have to pay attention to the details. And one of the highlights of going from just cruise passenger to filming on these sailings is, I would say, the connections we've made with crew. Because we're interviewing people, because we're asking people to sit with us and talk to us on camera and be vulnerable. Walls come down. We've been able to really get to know the crew on these ships, and learn about the small touches and the real hospitality that a lot of these cruise lines offer. And it's funny because, before I started like shooting on cruise ships, I was a passenger on, over 30 different cruises. And I was just there to have fun and spend time with family. And of course I noticed the crew and chatted with them and was friendly with people. But going behind the scenes and really getting to know people, like you learn a whole other layer of what these cruise lines have to offer, what each specific line kind of has to offer. So like one example of that I'll share is, we talked about Windstar. I had heard about Windstar for years and years, and it had been on my list for a long time, and I just never sailed them. And one of the things that I'd always heard about them from people who had sailed them was how amazing the crew was. And I remember thinking like, well, how amazing can they be? Crew is amazing on every ship, every sailing. Like, that's one of the highlights is the crew on ships. But people would say it's just different. As they have a different thing going on there. And so when I finally went on WinStar, like I had really high expectations for that because I was like, all right, show us what you got. And sure enough, it really is a different kind of hospitality they're offering and a different level. Like the service, the crew there, it's kind of on another level, and it's also really hard to articulate and verbalize. And hopefully, it'll come through in our episode when that one goes live. But that was a good example of like slowing down and really noticing these things. And then, um, another example was the Hal Rotterdam, which I know you've been on, so you may be able to relate to this, which was I had been on, I think, 2 Holland America sailings in the past. So was familiar with the brand, familiar with, what they had to offer as a passenger, all the things. But by really kind of slowing down and getting into the weeds and the details on the sailing that we did with the Rotterdam, what I really learned about them and what I took away was that they may be a mass market line on the surface, but they really do. I think one of the things that kind of distinguishes them from other mass market lines in this premium space is it felt like the small ships of big ships, if that makes sense. It was kind of like they had a lot of little touches, everything from, that Dutch cafe that people talk about, the orange party, which I will talk about later. But they had all these little touches. And, when I had been on as a passenger in the past, I didn't pay attention to any of that. I was kind of just running through the motions, having a good time, doing the things. But I had to go to all these things when you're shooting it. You have to like attend the stuff to see it, to shoot it. And the Cake Me Away event, all these special little things. And you really felt like, wow, this doesn't feel like a mass market ship to me. I'm on a big ship. And yeah, it's a premium line, but they just added a different layer of hospitality onto that really made it feel special.
Yeah, I remembered like the orange party, and and I was thinking, like, what's the big deal with orange?
Yeah,
And then watching the show, I understood, the historical significance of that color, in that country, and
yeah,
so it was very informative. Very, I just can't. I can't, listeners, I can't recommend it enough.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so, and like I said, I kind of jokingly said binge watch. Well, you can binge watch season 1 in less than 2 hours. So,
hmm Oh, and then you had asked about how kind of that unlocks these new insights that I had about cruise selection. And what I would just say to that is when you sort of slow down enough to pay attention to these details, now I have this like, it's like this whole other realm of knowledge. So when somebody says, like, oh, what ship should I take to Alaska? It's like, well, what kind of experience would you like? Do you
hmm
want, because now all the ships go there, right? Even Royal Caribbean sends some of their big ships there, Celebrity, like,
well,
so
Virgin Voyages just
Voyages
started going
Voyages
there.
is there. So I have a lot more to say if somebody
hmm
dares to ask me about like what cruise should I go on. It turns into a much longer conversation and they probably wanted to know because I have all this extra insight now that I apply to that to my
hmm
answers of how they
hmm
should select a particular cruise.
hmm I would, mentioning Virgin Voyages, I would think Virgin Voyages would be amenable to being
Yeah.
being part of your program.
Yeah, they're one of the ones we're talking to. So hopefully we'll
Oh, okay.
find some time to do something
Okay.
with them too.
Well, do you have any interesting anecdotes from the filming that we didn't see up
Yeah.
on the screen? I mean, as the phrase goes, things that are on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example from each of the three cruises that we feature at Grand Voyages. So um starting with Uniworld, like I said, we're filming on an active sailing, and we actively avoid filming any passengers and don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable in any way, anything like that. So one of the things that Uniworld does that they do really well is and you'll remember this from your river cruise experience. They probably do the same on Emma's. They do these nightly briefings, right? Where they talk about the day you just had in port and what's in store for tomorrow. Um, but somehow Riverside, they just elevate this nightly event. It's like there's the champagne at the door, there's the bartenders making cocktails, there's really good music. Then they bring in the cruise director, and he's, charmed for days. And you'll see him, Rick, who's in our episode. He does a lot of he has a big presence in our episode, but he gave these amazing, talks every night. And I'm I was really bummed that I couldn't include more of that in the episode, because the thing was, the room where they give these nightly briefings is in the lounge. And as you know, river ships are small, spaces are small, and they were filled. Everybody went to these. It was like the nightly gathering. And so every night I'd show up there with my camera and try to get a little bit, but it was just so hard to film without getting people in the shot. So we shot a lot, but it didn't end up in the cut because we couldn't. A very small clip of Rick, the cruise director, like giving his talk, ended up in there. And so that's one of the things that I wish we could have included more of, because it was such a special part of the Uniworld brand and what they do, and their whole part of their hospitality offering are those nightly briefings. So that, unfortunately, a lot of that ended up on the cutting room floor. And then on Holland, we talked about the orange party. That's another thing. I wish I could have included more of that in the episode. Same thing. I don't know if when you went, it was really crowded. Like, this thing was off the charts, like crowded with people and everybody dancing and having a great time. And we were able to shoot a little bit of like the crew and the captain and the band. But it
Oh
was
yeah,
really
the captain had on orange shoes, right?
orange shoes and orange glasses. Yeah, because he's Dutch. So he was really celebrating. So we were able to shoot, to include a little bit of that in the episode. But for the most part, everything we shot had too many people in it, and all the rest of it. So unfortunately, a lot of that ended up on the cutting room floor. And I would have loved to show more of that, because like you and I just said, it's one of Holland's, like it's a big event of the week. It's part of their heritage. It's part of what, their unique offering in the cruise world. And the passengers love it. The passengers, oh my God, they got so into it. People were, I don't know if, for those of you who've been on Virgin Voyages and they have Scarlet Night and everybody dresses in red, the orange party on Holland America, it's like the passengers brought their orange clothes, people were dressed in orange. So anyway, we didn't get to include as much as that as I would have liked, because it was really special. But anyway, and then on Riverside, I have a funny story, anecdote about that. That we were in Lyon. We actually did an overnight in Lyon, and so I was super excited about that port, to be able to really shoot it fully, because Lyon is the gastronomy capital of France, right? It's famous for its gastronomy and the food. And we had the idea of like, okay, we're gonna go with the captain, the executive chef Benoit, to the market, which you will see Benoit in this whole episode. So we did shoot that part of Lyon. But later on that day, we took our cameras out and we wanted to go film the city of Lyon and eat in a traditional bouchon, they call them, those traditional restaurants where you get the Lyonnaise cuisine. And as it turned out, the weekend that we were docked in Lyon was also the Lyon Marathon. And I don't know if you've ever traveled to a city when you're unlucky enough to be there when they have the
Yes,
marathon.
yes, that is well, not marathon, but some other things. Yeah,
Yeah, and it just puts a damper on things because the streets are closed, everything's crowded, like all the things. So, long story short, we went out with these big ideas to shoot in the streets and shoot in the restaurants. We couldn't get in any restaurants. Everything was packed because everyone was in town for the marathon. We couldn't get past certain streets because they were shut down, people running through the street, the whole thing. So, Leon was something that I had hoped would be a big part of the episode. We didn't get to include it because we didn't get a lot from it because of the unlucky timing of us being there. So we ended up pivoting to our little segment on Lyon in that episode, which you'll see is we filmed the sail out from Lyon, and we really made a big deal out of just the scenery and how gorgeous it is to sail under that bridge. Riverside docks, not where Amma docks, they dock just outside the city. And at first we thought, oh, that might be a downside. But then they said, no, 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 it's an upside because when we sail out, it's absolutely gorgeous. We sail through the entire city and we get to go under the bridge. And that we were able to shoot. We shot it really well. And that's one of my favorite parts of the entire series is that sequence sailing out of Lyon. So blessing and a curse that we didn't get to include more of the city of Lyon. We really just got to include the scenery and the sail out.
now you've given us a hint on season 2. To the extent
Mhm.
you can share, besides what you've already told us on season 2, what does the future hold for Grand Voyage?
We want to keep shooting. We love doing this. We're going to keep shooting. We've got at least, I think, 6 to 10 things in the works over the next year, episodes.
So that's about
We
2-3 seasons.
Yeah, exactly. So we're into planning season 3 already. So what the future holds is hopefully 2 seasons a year, each season getting longer, from 3 episodes to 4 to 5, if we could make it to 6. And then the other thing is that eventually we will start showing it on additional platforms. Okay, right now we're exclusively with Prime Video, but we will as you know, as I said, my background is in distribution, so I know that world really well. So we'll be spreading out onto Apple, onto Tubi, onto other free streaming platforms like that. And also, I don't know if you have a lot of international viewers right now. We're available on Prime Video in the UK, but we will also be releasing it in other European countries.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on our international audience. So we're heard
Fantastic.
in 153 countries.
That's like all of them. I think there's only
So,
that's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be going
so
global and more platforms.
speaking of the future, I mentioned mine a couple of times. What's on your cruise and travel bucket list?
I would love to do a world cruise. That is like, I think, my ultimate bucket list. I would love to be in a position to get on a ship for 1, 2, 3 months and live my life. Live my life
Would
that
you
way.
do you think you would want to film it or just cruise?
Well, I both. So I would love to film, and one of the things we're trying to organize is to film a segment of a world cruise because a lot of these world cruises they allow you now to come on for certain segments,
Right.
join it, which I love
Hmm.
that they've done that. So they've made it accessible to more people. So I'd like to film a segment on a world cruise, and then I think I'd like to just enjoy a longer segment on a world cruise someday. So that's kind of at the top of my bucket list.
So, Stacey, before we let you go, I like to ask guests a few light,
Yeah,
and dare I say, even fun questions. And studio moguls like you like to have fun too.
of course.
um, what do you do in your me time? Uh,
Yeah.
not cruising, not creating, not producing, really your me time.
I love fitness, so I walk a lot. I like to take hikes. Fitness is part of my me time. That's kind of how I wind down daily, weekly, all the time, even when we're traveling. That's part of my me time. My me time when I'm cruising is the gym, just taking a
Mm-hmm.
minute to go in
Mm-hmm.
there and do a little or a lot, whatever, or walk in the decks, right? So that's a lot of my me time, and then I also enjoy wine. So I've started studying more about wine. That's become a real hobby for me. So I like to um, do that. I've also get to do that on cruises sometimes, so that's fun. So yeah, those are two things that I like to do during my me time when I'm not thinking about work or shooting or anything like that.
Well, given what you just said about wine, if I can pitch the podcast, make sure you listen to, is it last week?
I listen to Sip
What do we,
Watch.
yeah, okay. You listen to her.
Yeah,
So just a couple of weeks ago, so she was the first sommelier that I had on the show, Sit Watch Travel.
Sip Watch
Well,
Travel. Yeah, Rose.
yeah, so just a couple of weeks ago, I had my
Yes, I
second
listened to her
sommelier.
too. She was
Oh,
wonderful.
okay. So
Yeah,
you did listen to that. Yeah. So you would, if you love wine, you would love that show.
yeah.
So, um, okay. Speaking of wine, and maybe I already have an answer to this question. What are your favorite cruise drinks and favorite cruise foods?
Okay. Foods. I love a lobster tail. I'll always take a lobster tail if that's available, surf and turf. So I'll say that's probably my favorite food. I also enjoy ordering seafood when I'm on cruises. Um, that's something I typically don't cook at home. So if that's available, and back to Hal, they had this wonderful Holland America has this like port to plate in 48 hours type of thing. So on that cruise in Norway and even in Alaska, you're in these places that have wonderful fish in the market. So I eat a lot of seafood. That I say that's my favorite cruise food. Favorite cruise drink, champagne. I'll always have champagne on a cruise, and then I'll enjoy the wines also, of course. But favorite drink, champagne, and then if it's a cocktail, I'm a bourbon girl, so I'll order a Manhattan, or I'm also a martini girl. I'll order a martini.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, well, we have very similar tastes in food.
Oh.
If I were stuck on a desert island and I had to eat the same thing for the rest of the time, it would be lobster. uh,
Good stuff.
so,
Yeah.
and I love martinis. Although I haven't, the bug hasn't bitten me on espresso
Me
martinis.
neither. Me neither.
Um,
I'm a
you know,
traditional.
yeah, a lot of cruises love those. And I like espresso. I
Yeah.
got a latte machine and all that, but mm,
Yeah.
uh, okay. So this is kind of the opposite of the bucket list question. Where are you most gratified for having visited on a cruise?
I would say, wow, a couple places. Years ago, I did a Holy Land cruise on Celebrity, and that was one of the highlights of my cruising career, I would think. It was just a part of the world that I probably wouldn't have gotten to otherwise, or that quickly or that easily. So that's right up there with one, top five. Um, Another is the Mediterranean. I love the Mediterranean. I've been able to sail Europe many times, and that it never gets old, ever, ever, ever. I love it so much. Um, and then what else? Yeah, I think and transatlantic. I love a transatlantic cruise, and the Queen Mary too should definitely stay on your bucket list.
Yeah,
I've done it
yeah,
on
that
other
yeah.
lines too, but
I've done one transatlantic, and I loved it,
yeah,
and I loved the price
I
because
know,
it was,
right?
it was a repositioning cruise, and I was reading about, this was what, 16 days,
Hmm.
Virgin Voyages. I was reading about 5-day cruises, Virgin Voyages cruises. They were paying more than I was paying
Yeah,
transatlantic.
that's what's
You
awesome.
know,
It's for like it's
yeah,
like a cruiser's cruise. I like to say those transatlantics.
yeah, yeah. But my wife does it. We started with 8 sea days,
That's a
and
lot.
around about the fifth
She
day,
was
she was
bored.
like, "I need land. I need land. I need
You're
land."
like, I can't help you.
Yep, yep. But I was in my glory.
Yeah,
Me in the water.
yeah.
So it's a similar question about highlights,
Hmm.
but this one is specific to Grand Voyage.
Okay.
What has been the highlight of filming Grand Voyage?
Without a doubt, getting to know the people that we've been blessed to get to know. And I say this after every cruise. I turn to my partner, Jennifer, and I say, I can't believe how lucky we were to spend time with such amazing people that we never would have met otherwise and got to share time with. So, without a doubt, and I think that'll come through. I think that comes through in the series. I like to say these, when I show the finished episode to our cruise partners, I let them know, and I mean this, like it is my love letter. These are love letters to these cruise lines, to these sailings, to the people, to the crew. Um, and yeah, so without a doubt.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that. These are love letters.
they really
I love
are.
that.
And I think you probably see that when you watch it. They're done with a
Hmm.
loving hand.
Okay. Finally, Stacey, what's your single most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I would say probably my most memorable um, experience was probably taking my mom on her first transatlantic, and seeing how much she enjoyed it. I still have, I saved pictures of just her looking out at the sea, the beauty of those transatlantic. She had always wanted to do one. So being able to take her on one of those and see how much she enjoyed it is probably my most memorable experience. It's like sharing what you love with the people you love the most is always
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah. That's a great choice. I'm sure. My dad's gone now,
Mm,
but I sometimes daydream, fantasize, whatever the right word is, about taking him on a
mhm.
cruise. Oh, I still think about that,
Yeah,
and he's been gone for 13 years,
yeah,
but especially when I talk to people like you,
yeah.
who they're talking about memorable moments. Several people have mentioned taking their parents
Yeah.
on their first cruise or their last cruise or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, Stacey, thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast, and all the best to you with Grand Voyages.
Thank you, Paul.
I am so glad that I ran into you.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty not heavy watcher, but I have Prime Video, and I never came across Grand Voyage. And that would have been like an automatic watch if I had come across
Yeah.
it. But and we're well over 250 episodes now, and a number of people have come back on. You know, to me, you're a guest, to use a word, that's evergreen, because you're going to always be producing shows and always have stuff to talk about. So you have an open invitation.
Thank you.
When you're ready to come back,
Season 2,
give me a holler, and you're here.
Thank you, Paul. I will do that. And thank you for watching. And I would love to hear from anybody who listens, who watches it, likes it, don't like it. Reach out. Feedback welcome. We'll take it into account for our next seasons.
All right, Stacey. As I like to say, we will see you on the ocean.
Thank you. Bye.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.